Is it rolling?
It is.
I am Jaya. Where's my head cut off?
Makes you look good.
Where's my head cut off?
It's not actually. If you do that, it's not cut off.
Okay. I am Jaya, and I've been chanting a mantra since I was some of my earliest memories in my dreams. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. You, time to you. And some things I like about it. Oh, also I developed this thing called Dancing Ones and Zeros. That name came high school or college? High school. But it means lots of things, but it's like the name of my hypothetical book about this stuff. So on the one hand, can you see all the way to the edge?
Yeah.
On the one hand, we have, this is like the aperture that we're looking through. And we can start with Krishna. Ram. In the middle, we'll have Hare. So on the one hand, we have this kind of shape, or really it's the essence of recognition and harmonic differentiation. And through bifurcation and poles, right? You have hot and cold, left or right, inside and outside, up and down, before and after, and self and other. All of these differentiations are somehow still unified, and there's a harmony between them. So we have this recognition when a pattern is repeated, and a harmonic differentiation. A pattern requires, at least in the very simplest pattern, two different things. So this mantra, we go Hare, we separate Krishna and Ram with Hare. And sometimes we separate Krishna and Krishna with Hare. So go Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Sometimes we don't separate it. So there's these different modes. And we represent this as a 1, and this is a 0. We get all manner of patterns when we think of this as a sequence, and think of it as a repeating sequence as a mantra is. And so, for example, we have 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1. So, if you think of this as what came before and what comes next, this is sort of these are the essential building blocks of sequentiality, of there being any kind of differentiation, and the necessary building blocks for recognition. We get them over again. We get patterns, we get repeating patterns. Everything's built up from this stuff. If we do the infinite exhaustive information sequence, we can play this game where we say, okay, with this many bits, we can represent a pretty nice photograph of people. And then we can explore all possible combinations of that many bits. And what we come to discover is we go through every possible face, real or unreal. And this is kind of what we do with AI, is we explore this latent space, which is a way of jumping around this infinite abyss of possible configurations to ones that sort of match a more recognizable pattern to us, like their faces, or they're the same person's face, or something from a different angle. Anyway, so on the one hand, we have this kind of seed of pattern. And on the other hand, we have our conscious experience. And that happens, this little aperture that I drew, there's, let's see, inside and outside. And the content is here. Goes through the aperture. It gets sort of built in here. When there's this resonance between the inside and outside, that's recognition. We've seen it before, and there it is again. And this aperture is experiencing all those qualities that we experience, the qualia, the left and right, the green and blue, the hot and cold, right? We have our sight, taste, touch, smell, hearing, and each of those represents like a continuum, left to right, hot to cold, and that is an aperture. And the things that are far away are a little bit back in time, and then they reach us. And on this film, when it goes from outside to inside, that's where we have our experience of self differentiated from other. It's the frontier of self and other. And when we're internalizing that, comes before our attention, comes across our attention. So I like to think of the experience we're having as a sort of wave through space-time. And it takes up a segment. So anyway, it's sort of like flying through at the speed of light through this ocean of cause and effect, the Karnataka ocean, the ocean of cause and effect. And through our willpower and our favorite flavor seeking ability, we're trying to move through that latent space of all possible configurations of matter to resonate with one that matches us at a core level. So this mantra is like an indication of, well, what is the core level of experience? What is the fundamental basis of this phenomenon of experiencing various qualia on various poles through an aperture? So this is like a way to get at that. So if you go back far enough, you have this sort of fundamental, anyway, that's all I want to do for now. Any questions?
Really well organized. I'm wondering, so it seems like the data that comes in the third diagram, my only question is that that's like a spectrum of what our optic nerve and our senses can perceive, but there's so much stuff outside of that that we're not even able to perceive that isn't coming in because we don't have the instrument to perceive it. So what about that data? Like if we know 1010001, what about all the other bits that aren't even recognizable?
I guess the question is, like, if you take all of the sentient living beings in a particular area, is that enough to keep track of the state of matter that it's in? And the answer, I believe, is no. That's Paramatma, keeping track of all the atoms, sort of a field of observation. So the secret, the secret, like you get what you wish for. So that's the mechanism for that. But then there's also, you have to wish for what you really wish for, because you can wish for something and not get it. So how do you trace out what it is you really wish for? And this is kind of posing this idea that there's a fundamental shared main flow, like a shared page. Everyone's on the same page. I call it inner out consensus. It's kind of a joke and a nod to a show called Silicon Valley. It came out with middle out compression. But inner out consensus is, I take it for granted that some part of my experience is shared by another living being. And that's how I am able to believe that I can agree that we perceived the same thing, or that we experienced the same thing, that our perception is shared. And in that sense, if you go all the way back to the core, there is some seed, and that seed is Raso Vaisaha. He is that flavor. It's the fundamental flavor. It's the differentiation between self and other, and it's love. It's the desire for there to be other and for other to receive self, and that fundamental relationship is echoed in all possible varieties.
Why does this matter to you?
Oh, so you're going through this, you're going at the speed of light through this space-time graph, right? Every possible combination is out there. Why did I land here? I call that selective gravity. So I can do stuff. I can like pick up this thing and put it back down. A black hole can't really do that. It has enormous gravity, but not a lot of selective gravity. It's at the very far end of the spectrum of hyperdense objects. I'm in this sweet spot where there's a sun and there's a planet and there's a crust and there's a atmosphere, and then there's a point in time where organisms are like viable here. And so that's where I landed. And so my selective gravity has brought me to a place where I can dance, dancing ones and zeros. I can sing and I can dance and I can search for my favorite flavor, which happens to be the reason I'm here is because this particular experience is approaching gradually that favorite flavor. And so as we seek for our favorite flavors, we're guiding our sort of vector through this graph of cause and effect, resonating more or less with different configurations, trying to land there. So that waveforms are collapsing as we exert our will, and we're entangled with each other. So we drag everybody a little bit into our choice. And if you know where you're going ahead of time, it's like, that's why we've got this complicated cerebral cortex. We're projecting into the future, right? That's the future segment. If I do X, Y, Z, I'll get that lollipop, right? So it's important to me because it's like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Who am I? What's the whole deal? And when I sit in that meditation, in that trance, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, I can really focus on like what is happening at the core, what is the seed, and what is my relationship to the origin of all that is. And what I've come up with so far from saints and gurus and my own meditation is that it is this innate beauty and loving relationship between self and other. Self was crying for other to be real, and other was real and exceeded self's expectations. It was even greater than self was hoping for, which is exactly what self was hoping for. And all of reality is like this joint cosmic simulation to figure out all the possible ways that could unfold, so that we can all come back to the beginning and be like, this was perfect, this was beautiful, this was what we meant to do as a family, all living beings together.
What component of this specifically gives you the most amount of like faith in that, what you just shared? Like, I know the whole thing together, but like, which part really triggers the most amount of like, oh, that makes so much rational sense?
There's obviously I left out all the pieces that I've talked about a billion other times. I was just trying to present like the latest thing that I was thinking of. But this idea of like, okay, time and space and the relationship between the two, I have this experience. I'm this self, and I'm always zero distance from myself. And as I go through time, one moment after the other, I am constantly presented with an opportunity, with a choice between this or that. I have a choice between this or that. And what I do with that choice is like inevitably coming from myself. All of my interactions with reality have shaped my filters and my where I am right now in this graph, but like I can't help but be me. And the reminder of that gives me a ton of peace, but also there's a lot of meaningfulness in the idea that every choice I make is bringing me to where I chose to go, and that everybody goes with me and vice versa. I go with everybody wherever they're choosing to go. And so we have this beautiful cosmic dance, dancing ones and zeros, where we each choose one or zero. And the conclusion of all of that will the intersection of all of that will over time is reality. And so this is what we're living in, and this is not some secondary thing to think about. For me, this is reality. So like, I want to know very clearly how that mechanism works, and I want to be able to choose the state of consciousness I have, especially not just the trappings, not just the physical manifestation, but especially the state of consciousness we have, because what we're seeking is a flavor, and flavor happens in our experience, not in the form per se. Blah and blah.
Any conclusion?
I am Jaya. Do it. Make your dreams come true. Just do it.
Should I stop?
Yeah.